You're watching All 24 News World News program live from Algiers, and here's what's making headlines this hour. On National Immigration Day, Algeria's president honored the diaspora's economic role and their historic solidarity with the Liberation Revolution. Also in our news tonight, Gaza health officials say the Zionist occupation has violated the ceasefire as they recovered 30 bodies. Meanwhile, calls intensify for borders to be fully opened. And later on, the Sahrawi cause gained fresh support at the UN as the Polisario Front slammed Morocco for defying a European court ruling, while Moroccan courts handed down unfair sentences against Sahrawi students. Welcome back. First off in our news tonight, President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune marked National Immigration Day on Thursday, honoring the 64th anniversary of the October 17, 1961 demonstrations. In his message, he paid tribute to the martyrs and national fighters who fell abroad during the Liberation War and saluted Algerians across the diaspora, praising their loyalty and active role in Algeria's ongoing economic transformation.
On this annual event, marking the 64th anniversary of the demonstrations of 17 October 1961, I pray with you on this occasion with reverence for the souls of those who passed away from the generation of national freedom fighters in foreign lands during the victorious Liberation War, and for the souls of the righteous martyrs. I extend my greetings to the daughters and sons of our national community around the world, who carry their love and loyalty for Algeria in their hearts, demonstrating their commitment by participating in the economic transformation underway in our country and by their determination to contribute to the process of national renewal and the building of the modern nation-state to which the proud Algerian people aspire.
President Abdelmajid Tebboune reaffirmed that October 17 remains an enduring symbol in Algeria's national memory, embodying the solidarity of Algerian immigrants with the Liberation Revolution that inspired global support for a people fighting for their freedom.
On October 17th, we commemorate an unforgettable day in our national memory, a day that symbolizes the attachment of Algerian immigrants to the glorious Liberation Revolution, which became, after 7 years of armed struggle, a liberation epic, whose momentum and revolutionary spirit won the support of freedom lovers worldwide for a people fighting to overturn colonial history and break free from its domination and tyranny with the most precious sacrifices.
President Abdelmajid Tebboune noted that as colonialism faced growing pressure from the legitimacy of Algeria's struggle and the justice of its cause, it descended into hysteria, resorting to brutal repression against peaceful demonstrators at that historic moment.
Cornered by the legitimacy of the struggle and the justice of the cause, the colonial regime descended into hysteria at this historic moment as Paris police, under the command of police prefect Maurice Papin, imposed an arbitrary curfew on the Algerian community, and his arrogance led him into the depths of criminality and savage repression against peaceful demonstrators, resulting in a tragic massacre by drowning demonstrators in the Seine River and subjecting them to oppression, torture, and deportation to camps, so that the memory of these sacrifices by our community members remains forever present in minds.
On a similar note, President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune, joined by senior officials, observed a minute of silence in honor of the martyrs on National Immigration Day, marking the anniversary of the October 17, 1961 demonstrations. President Abdelmajid Tebboune received veteran freedom fighter Jamila Bouhired on Thursday at the presidential headquarters in Algiers, the capital. The Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army General Said Chingriha observed a minute of silence in memory of the martyrs of the October 17, 1961 demonstrations. The Defense Ministry said the tribute held at the Army General Staff Headquarters marked the 64th anniversary of National Immigration Day, in line with President Abdelmajid Tebboun's directive to honor every year the victims of the brutal repression of peaceful Algerian demonstrators in France. Algeria marks National Immigration Day, commemorating the 64 years since the October 17, 1961 massacres and atrocities committed by colonial France against Algerians in Paris. More in this story with Nabil Khazini.
The voices of freedom rise again on its 64th anniversary, recalling the massacres of October 17, 1961, committed by France, 7 years after the outbreak of the Algerian Liberation Revolution. The flames of the revolution moved from the land of the fighters to the strongholds of the occupiers in a scene that exposed colonial France. The national spirit of the Algerian community was revealed, responding to the call of the homeland, even sacrificing their precious lives as the price for freedom and independence. Black Tuesday, as those who lived through the massacre describe it in all its details, saw armed French police brutally suppressing tens of thousands of peaceful protesters who responded to the call of the France Federation of the National Liberation Front, condemning the curfew imposed on Algerians in France. Hours of brutal repression ended with the killing of hundreds of peaceful Algerians, many of whose bodies were thrown into the River Seine, along with thousands of wounded and missing. Around 15,000 Algerians were arrested during the event, the majority of whom were sent to detention camps under appalling conditions, left for a long time without food or medical treatment. The wounds of the Algerian memory are reopened every October 17, reminding each time of the brutality of the French colonizer and its savagery against Algerians defending their land and their just cause.
Minister of Mujahideen Abdelmalek Tashrif said Thursday that the October 17, 1961 demonstrations by Algerian immigrants in France reflected the highest values of national solidarity. Speaking at a symposium in Algiers marking the 64th anniversary of National Immigration Day, he stressed that those protests affirmed a united national will and a shared goal, praising the diaspora's continued commitment to Algeria's progress and defense of its interests.
These demonstrations embody the highest spirit of unity among Algerians, both inside the country and abroad, affirming a single national will with one shared goal, liberating the homeland and building an independent state. The Algerian diaspora was a true extension of the liberation struggle, offering financial, moral, and militant support, proving to the world that Algeria is one indivisible body, that the spirit of resistance knows no exile. Today, under President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algeria proudly embraces all its sons and daughters, wherever they are. His decisions and directives reflect this noble vision, giving special care to the national community abroad, recognizing it as a strategic asset contributing to our present and future.
Moving on to a different news story now. 3 Palestinians were killed and several others wounded on Thursday by Zionist occupation forces in different areas of the Gaza Strip. Local sources said one man was shot dead in a Bureij refugee camp. Another was killed by a bomb dropped from a Zionist drone in Bani Suhaila, Khan Yunis, while a third succumbed to wounds sustained 2 days earlier from occupation gunfire. The government media office in Gaza said Thursday that 120 bodies of Palestinian martyrs detained by the Zionist occupation have been recovered, revealing evidence of field executions and brutal torture. Examinations showed signs of hanging, blindfolding, and execution after arrest, with some bodies crushed under Zionist tanks, clear proof, it said, of systematic crimes against civilians. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza warned Thursday that many cases of malnutrition still need urgent treatment amid a total collapse of the health system. It called for a reopening of crossings and for the occupation to respect agreed provisions, noting that more than 400 surgeries and care for 170,000 wounded are urgently required.
We are facing a shortage of resources like never before in the sector, and it is imperative to open the crossings and for the occupying forces to adhere to what was agreed upon. We need to perform more than 400 surgeries and treat 170,000 injured people. It is essential to allow the entry of aid trucks to operate hospitals and save the lives of the wounded and patients. The health services in the sector have been completely destroyed, and there are many cases of malnutrition that continue to suffer and require monitoring and treatment. We no longer have a functional health system, and the health infrastructure has been severely affected by much of what the occupation has carried out in terms of genocide and crimes.
UNRWA warned that the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains catastrophic, stressing that the ceasefire with the occupation is only a first step toward easing the suffering. Spokesperson Jonathan Fowler said every day of delay in aid delivery costs more lives, urging a major increase in support. He added that around 6,000 aid trucks are ready to cover Gaza's food needs for 3 months once access is granted. The Zionist occupation decided at dawn Thursday to keep the Rafah crossing closed, claiming Hamas had not done enough to return the bodies of its prisoners. This came despite the Qassam brigades handing over 2 bodies of prisoners killed in Zionist bombings on Wednesday. The brigades said recovering the remaining bodies requires extensive efforts and special equipment, affirming their commitment to resolving the issue. Similarly, U.S. President Donald Trump said at the White House that Hamas is still searching for the bodies of hostages under the rubble and in tunnels across Gaza. Citing a U.S. official, Axios reported that Hamas plans to return all the bodies, though the process may take time. The official added that Washington will not allow the ceasefire agreement to collapse.
They're looking for them, absolutely. They're looking. So we have the living hostages all back. They returned some more today. It's a gruesome process. I almost hate to talk about it. But they're digging. They're actually digging. There are areas where they're digging and they're finding a lot of bodies. Then they have to separate the bodies. You wouldn't believe this. And some of those bodies have been in there a long time. And some of them are under rubble. They have to remove rubble. But there are graves, and some are in tunnels that died in tunnels that are way down under the earth. And the tunnels are like 3 feet. Can you believe it? 3 feet high.
Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf said the Gaza ceasefire has renewed hope for ending the suffering of the Palestinian people, but must be reinforced. Speaking at the Non-Aligned Movement Ministerial Committee on Palestine in Kampala, he stressed that its success depends on full adherence to all commitments, including the withdrawal of Zionist forces and unrestricted humanitarian access.
We meet today in the wake of encouraging developments marked by the signing of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, a development that has rekindled the hope for an end to the untold suffering inflicted upon the Palestinian people. This is indeed a crucial step in the right direction, but a step that must be consolidated through a comprehensive approach to address both the immediate needs of the Palestinian people and the long-term requirements of sustainable peace in the region. From our perspective, the success of this agreement depends not only on the full respect of all commitments made to uphold the ceasefire, to ensure the withdrawal of the Israeli forces, and to guarantee unhindered humanitarian access, but also, and most importantly, on pairing this agreement with a serious and credible political process that should lead to the establishment of an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state within the framework of the two-state solution.
The Algerian foreign minister stressed that the international community must finally realize the two-state solution is an inevitability at every level.
The time has indeed come for the international community to realize that this solution is not only a necessity to fulfill the Palestinian national aspirations, it is a local imperative, a regional imperative, and a global imperative. A local imperative to bring an end to 8 decades of injustice inflicted upon the Palestinian people as a result of the continuing occupation of their land. A regional imperative to halt the most dangerous spiral of escalation and instability driven by the Israeli expansionist agenda as embodied in the so-called Greater Israel Project. And last but not least, a global imperative to preserve the credibility of international law and that of the United Nations itself, and to reaffirm that no one is above the rules, principles, and values that bind the international community in its entirety.
The UN Decolonization Committee has adopted a new resolution affirming Western Sahara's legal status and the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence. The decision made in New York was attended by a representative of the occupying Moroccan state who remained silent. Algeria said the Moroccan occupation is deliberately prolonging the conflict to impose its illegal control over Sahrawi territories and exhaust the international community's patience. Addressing the UN Fourth Committee, Algeria highlighted growing global support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and warned against imposing autonomy to block the referendum and undermine international law.
More than 50 UN resolutions unanimously confirm the inalienable and non-negotiable right to self-determination for the people of Western Sahara. However, Morocco responded with an arrogant silence, followed by a policy of fait accompli. Mr. President, since 1975, the Sahrawi people have been declaring their firm and resolute rejection of this attempt, aimed at swallowing them by force and annexing them to Morocco against their will. This rejection is not mere stubbornness or stiffness, rather it reflects dignity. The solution has existed and has been there since 1991. It is called Fair and Transparent Referendum on Self-Determination. All forms of evasion, procrastination and delay will not change this existing and steadfast truth in any way.
Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf held a series of meetings on the sidelines of the 19th ministerial meeting of the non-aligned movement to strengthen Algeria's bilateral and multilateral ties. He met with Tunisian Foreign Minister Mohamed Ali Nafti to discuss advancing the two countries' partnership and coordinating positions on key issues, including Palestine and regional developments. Attaf also met with Serbian Foreign Minister Marko Doric to explore economic cooperation ahead of upcoming bilateral events, and with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to review developments in the Middle East following the Gaza ceasefire. In talks with Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parilla, both sides reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening the non-aligned movement. Attaf further met with Mozambican Foreign Minister Maria Manuela dos Santos Locas to follow up on decisions made during last month's presidential talks in Algiers and to expand bilateral cooperation. The military junta in Mali has again launched baseless attacks against Algeria, using a non-aligned movement meeting in Kampala as a platform for offensive remarks. This desperate posture only confirms the isolation and failure of the coup plotters in Bamako. Hossein Burkan reports now.
From yet another international platform, the Malian junta, mired in deep political and economic crises and severe international isolation, persists in launching accusations to Algeria, a tactic it routinely uses to deflect from its internal failures. Whether at the UN, the Security Council, or regional forums, Bamako's coup leaders repeat false claims of Algerian interference, but facts prove otherwise. These allegations are merely a desperate attempt to escape the worsening crises they themselves have imposed on Mali and its people.
The military junta in Mali has repeatedly used international summits to try to embarrass Algeria by spreading false claims, a move that seems driven by its own internal troubles as it seeks to divert attention and export its domestic crisis toward Algeria.
The maneuvers and accusations of the Malian junta reveal the depth of isolation they face since overthrowing legitimacy. Their reckless decisions, starting with renouncing the Algiers Agreement and reopening the gates of conflict after years of peace, have driven the Malian people into unprecedented security, economic, and political disasters.
It is no secret that the situation in Mali is far from promising. There is no political stability, no institutional development, and no real political participation. Added to that, the economic situation has hit rock bottom. Today, the gap between the aspirations of the Malian people and the ability of this regime, this junta, to meet those aspirations is enormous. And when the gap widens, the signs of the regime's failure become visible to all.
Mali is not only facing economic collapse. Bamako is engulfed in near total isolation as the ruling junta turns the country into a battleground for rivalries and haven for armed groups, while silencing political parties and opposition voices. Despite its repeated accusations against Algeria, the junta has failed to sway the Malian people. The reality is clear. Algeria has never abandoned its Sahel neighbors, continuing to offer support and work toward uniting Malians and fostering peace and stability in the region.
Look in Eastern Europe now. Germany has unveiled a comprehensive plan to counter what it calls Russian hybrid threats as Ukraine seeks $20 billion in military aid to sustain its war effort. Usama has more.
From the German capital, Berlin, the echoes of European confrontation with Moscow amplify. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced before Parliament the birth of a new defense strategy that goes beyond traditional military fortifications, but rather delves into the depths of what has become known as hybrid warfare.
Es ist eine Offensive der Verunsicherung, die wir erleben.
It is an offensive of uncertainty that we are experiencing. Putin is counting on fear to paralyze a free society and undermine our willingness to act decisively. But he is miscalculating. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not be intimidated. We will not allow our free society to be unsettled by hybrid attacks.
The German Chancellor did not hesitate to hold Russia responsible for what he describes as attempts to destabilize Europe, a continent that is accelerating its efforts to build a tough defensive wall against what it sees as an existential threat to its national security. On the other side of the confrontation, and in the halls of NATO, U.S. Secretary of Defense raises the bar of warnings, threatening to impose heavy costs on Russia unless it stops this war in Ukraine.
Now, if this war does not end, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression. If we must take this step, the U.S. War Department stands ready to do our part in ways that only the United States can do.
On the other front of the conflict, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov sets his red lines. His warnings against supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles constitute an explicit threat to deepen the rift between Moscow and Washington.
Where are they sending them, I guess? I'd have to ask that question.
Regarding President Trump's statements over the Tomahawk, the Russian minister denied that they were an American response to the proposals put forward at the Alaska summit last August. Amid the rhetoric of threats and counter-threats, Europe remains on alert due to a Russian threat. which the European Union's foreign policy chief confirms will not disappear, even with the end of the war in Ukraine.
US President Donald Trump said Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pledged to halt oil purchases from Russia during talks aimed at resolving trade disputes between Washington and New Delhi. Russia remains India's top oil supplier, providing 1.62 million barrels per day, about a third of its imports. Trump earlier imposed 2 rounds of 25% tariffs on India after failed trade negotiations and continued Russian oil purchases.
Yeah, sure. He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. He just said that 2 days ago, as you know. We have a great relationship. No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia, because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop.
For his part, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Thursday that Moscow relies on official statements from New Delhi and Beijing regarding oil purchases, following US President Donald Trump's claim that both countries would stop buying Russian oil. Peskov stressed that Russia bases its position on the official statement issued by India's foreign ministry in New Delhi.
We rely on the official statement issued by the India's foreign ministry from New Delhi. There was a statement from Beijing too. These statements are available everywhere. Therefore, we rely upon them.
The UN assistance mission in Afghanistan reported that at least 18 people were killed and more than 360 injured in recent clashes between the Pakistani army and Taliban forces along the border. The fighting, which began on October 10, caused hundreds of casualties and heightened tensions between the two countries. And that wraps up tonight's program. For the latest updates, stay connected with us on our social media platforms. Thanks for watching and have a good night.